Reflections. We perish for lack of knowledge. Excerpts from Knowing Christ Today, Why We Can Trust Spiritual Knowledge by Dallas Willard. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I reject you from being a priest to me. And since you have forgotten the law of your God, I will also forget your children. Hosea 4:6. It is important for us to have knowledge, and mere belief and commitment, though they have their unique places, cannot be substituted for knowledge, but actually depend upon it in crucial ways. To say that the righteous or just shall live by faith does not mean that they live by blind and irresponsible leaps in total absence or even in defiance of knowledge. It does not mean that the just live in a state of ignorance or stupidity. They do on occasion act in specific ways beyond what they know, but only within a framework of knowledge that makes such actions reasonable. Now we must deepen these points by discussing exactly how the lack of knowledge affects our lives and, in particular, how indispensable knowledge of Jesus Christ is to life in the contemporary world. That people often are seriously injured or even destroyed because they lack knowledge on some specific point is a platitude. Most of us have had some first-hand experience with its truth. Our news media and public life are filled with illustrations day by day. Lack of knowledge is not the only source of great harm to human life, but it is a major one. In general, when we are operating in an unfamiliar context, whether we are aware of it or not, we can badly injure ourselves and others, even fatally. But if we know our environment and our actions well, we stand a good chance of dealing with the realities of the case, avoiding the dangers and capitalizing on the opportunities. That is just common sense. Hence, we rightly place great value on knowledge. To be sure, knowledge is valued for its own sake. It adds substance to our soul and enhances our sense of self. Thus, Aristotle points out, all men by nature desire to know. An indication of this is the delight we take in our senses, for even apart from their usefulness, they are loved for themselves, and above all, the sense of sight. We like to see, and we strive to do so. We want a house or a room with a view, and we travel as tourists and treasure photographs, for example. Children at a very early age reply, "I know," when told something of which they were perfectly ignorant. Knowing enlarges them, strengthens them, and they immediately grasp this point. But quite apart from all that, knowledge is treasured for its usefulness. Thus, for almost every problem of human life, education or research is proposed as the solution. That is an old story, reaching back to Socrates and Plato at least, and it is not an unreasonable one. Socrates was famous for the idea that if we only know the good, we will do it. Probably in some appropriately qualified sense, his optimism on this point is correct. Without some qualification, however, it severely underestimates the readiness of human desire and human will to fly in the face of facts, truth, and knowledge, and to drag us after them. That underestimation was the fatal error of classical Greek thought. It could never deal with the presence of evil in public life. Perhaps such resistance to the good is possible only when the relevant knowledge is inadequately grasped or is rejected as knowledge. In any case, we constantly do see individuals suffer because of what they do not know or what they refuse to accept, though they do know it. Acting on false or ungrounded beliefs or inadequate information leads to destructive encounters with reality. People perish for lack of knowledge, because only knowledge permits assured access to reality, and reality does not adjust itself to accommodate our false beliefs, errors, or hesitations in action. Life demands a steady hand for good, and only knowledge supplies this. This is as true in the spiritual life as elsewhere. There are two different levels at which lack of knowledge takes effect. One is the level of particular facts or circumstances, and the other is that of a general outlook on life and world. This latter, in its upper reaches, is the level of worldview. If you don't know about the possibility of a particular investment, for example, you may miss an opportunity that would save your family from hard times or bankruptcy. But if you have no knowledge of how investment works, or perhaps do not know that there are such things as investments, then you have a more general problem. The words of the ancient Israelite prophet Hosea, quoted at the beginning of the video, refer to lack of knowledge at the worldview level. In some parts of the world now, AIDS infected men believed that having sexual intercourse with a virgin, even an infant, will cure them. This is a terrible mistake with horrific consequences. It results in disastrous acts and the destruction of many lives.
Things will get worse than they are right now if we do not successfully do what I just said. Prevent infections from coming in and dealing with the ones we have. This is a bad virus, but I don't think we're going there if we do the kinds of things that we are publicly saying we need to do.
But it also comes from a broader lack of knowledge of the body, disease, and medicine. It is not just a mistake on one specific point.
My name is Dr. Tony Fauci. I'm the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at NIH.
I think of Dr. Fauci. Probably never heard of it. He's a very fine research, top doctor at National Institute of Health, working hard doing something about research on this disease of AIDS.
President George W. Bush awarded Fauci the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2008. Fauci is the second National Institutes of Health Institute director to receive the highest civilian award in the United States.
Today we're going to be listening to Dr. Anthony Fauci. He's going to be talking about AIDS.
We need to be very serious about, for a while, life is not going to be the way it used to be in the United States. We have to just accept that if we want to do what's best for the American public.
It shows lack of knowledge with reference to broader and more ultimate issues.
So the first part of the agenda is to seek, test, and treat as many people as you can because we know it works.
How lack of knowledge leads to ruin is clear in such cases. And it is also clear that mistakes at higher levels of generality dictate a wide range of disasters at lower levels. And in this case, we should notice that the lack of knowledge in question comes from a rejection of something as knowledge. We can fail to know because we do not want to know, because what would be known would require us to believe and act in ways contrary to what we want. It often strikes first-time visitors to large cities, such as New York City, how the residents have taught themselves not to look at the problems surrounding them, for example, the homeless or victims of muggings. Looking makes you responsible. Avoidance is one reason for the lack of knowledge among humanity. Knowledge can be, and often is, rejected. People do not have to know things they very well could know. As the Apostle Paul says of humankind in general, though they knew God, they refused to acknowledge him as God, and were not thankful he was God. They let their imaginations run wild, and the light of knowledge went out in their hearts. See Romans 1:21 and Ephesians 4:17-19. The rejection and the subsequent loss of knowledge once possessed is a curious and tragic thing to be seen in individual lives and in societies. Whether we have knowledge and are living according to knowledge is a primary indicator of future weal and woe. One of the most curious expressions of human perversity is the saying, "What you don't know can't hurt you." It can ruin your life, or even kill you is all. Hosea knew this well. In his statement quoted, he was speaking from the perspective of a tiny people surrounded by gigantic nations. Its origin and survival had been, from the very beginning, due to a supernatural, personal presence that was guiding and protecting it. It's God Jehovah. Knowledge of Him and His ways was the Israelites' only essential resource. Conforming in practice to that knowledge kept them in harmony with the reality that mattered. But now, the prophet says, they are no longer walking in His ways. They have rejected the laws He gave them as knowledge of reality. Where there is no vision of the reality of God, the Jewish proverb says, people just do whatever they want. They cast off restraint. Proverbs 29:18. They have no way to rise above their harmful and chaotic impulses. This can be seen by a reflection on the hard experiences of Israel, but a candid examination of individuals and societies everywhere reveals it as well. And where people do not want to know God, He usually allows them to be without Him, at least for a while. When desire conflicts with reality, sooner or later, reality wins.